All right, today we're going to focus on project ideas, but I want to focus on project ideas that are different, that are niche, that are more focused on skills that I think are going to be relevant in the up and coming years than the stuff that probably everyone knows about. So, for example, the Cloud Resume Challenge is a very, very popular project, and I think it's an important one, and I think it's one that definitely teaches you a good amount of skills. But in terms of standing out, it doesn't really accomplish that anymore because now there's like so many tutorials and so many people have done it. And I think that it's now something that you can build without figuring out on your own. You can just go and find someone else's implementation guide. I want to focus on stuff that are newer, like focusing on skills that are relevant to like new engineers, newer things that are coming up. Because like when I joined or the cloud engineering field, or when the cloud resume challenge thing became popular, those skills were relevant. Those skills were niche, in demand, and all that kind of stuff. And a lot of the stuff is still in demand and things like that. But like, what is going to make you different? What is going to make you stand out? Okay. Now, before we dive into the ideas that I have, I want you to keep in mind that it takes a lot of work to stand out. Like this is exactly how I got my job at Microsoft, and it takes a lot of work. Until this day, I'm still putting in this type of work. And tech isn't for people who want to just kind of sort of stumble upon a job. It's very hard to get in, and then once you're in, it's very hard to keep growing. I'm telling you this. I'm almost let's see. I got my first help desk job in 2016, so I can say I probably was in tech almost a decade now, and I've never worked harder than now. You know, I'm pulling really long days, and obviously they're it balances out with like smaller, shorter days and like vacation. I just came back from an amazing vacation, like 2 week thing, like, and I love it and it interests me and it's a passion of mine and I'm very, very grateful that I get to work in this field. But it is a lot of hard work. So keep that in mind. Okay. And additionally, what I want you to do is when you are building something, keep in mind, write down topics of things that interest you that are related to that project. And if you can find like a specific tech niche in the project that you enjoy, then write about that. Write about it, build a blog about it, and start making that thing become your thing, right? The thing that you know about. Because having a range of skills is important, but then also having like T-shaped skills, right? Being really, really good and really, really interested in one area while having a solid foundation range of skills is very important. Okay. And then when you're done building these projects, alongside the blogs that you write, create a video, create a 30-second video about what your project does. And then you can share on LinkedIn, like, I built a CLI command that does this, or like a CLI tool that does this, or I built a browser extension that does this. And, and then share the GitHub repo, share a snippet, because people are very like visual. Recruiters on LinkedIn are very visual. Managers on LinkedIn are very visual because that's what social media is. It's very much like, how can I capture people's attention? And you might think, oh, it sucks that I have to do all this for a job, but that's like the reality of the hiring market. And it's this is the way I got a job. Like I was doing a lot of stuff with Azure Functions, and I was making a lot of videos, making a lot of blog posts back in when I joined Microsoft in 2021, and I was doing it for years. Right, I think I probably started around 2018, 2019 doing that kind of stuff. So it's not like just now. Like the market's always been difficult. It's just easier to hear about now, and I would say it is more difficult now, but by, like, standard, it's always been pretty hard. It's not like you could just stumble into a job. Like, I couldn't get a help desk job 10 years ago, so I had to work retail and work my way up, right? So I don't want you to feel like, "Oh, it's unfair for me." It's like, it's been difficult for most people, unless you had, like, a friend who owned, like, a company or whatever. Anyway, with all that being said, hi, I'm GPS. I do cloud things at Microsoft here on YouTube, and let's dive into this video. We're gonna switch over to the screen, and all these ideas really come from me building this terminal copilot thing over the weekend. I wanted to get hands on with the Azure MCP server, and then from this, I was like, okay, I'm gonna open sources. I'm gonna make people be able to like build on top of this, but also I have like so many cool ideas that I feel like you guys can go and build. So first thing we need to do is run the actual MCP server. And this is that command to run this. This isn't anything I made, so I'll have the instructions somewhere. I actually think it's in the README of the project. And then on this left side, I have the actual code that I put together here. And all it is a CLI tool that I write, for example, here, list my resource groups or show my storage accounts. We'll do so. Show all my storage accounts, right? So we run this here, and then it should be able to return us a list of storage accounts. And we see some activity going here on the right side of where the server output is here. And it returns my storage accounts from my Azure account, right? Now, let's just dive into this a little bit more. The way this works is, where is my, oh, I probably ran out of, okay, anyway, we're going to do this. Hold on, we're going to do this and we're going to run it again. And I'm going to show you here. So you see here, I run the Python script. It says connected to Azure MCP server, which is this server that I have running locally, okay? And then it says Ollama is available for natural language processing using model Gemma 3 with the 4 bill version, the 4 billion parameter version. Now, just in this thing here, just in setting this up and getting this project working, you're going to learn a lot, okay? One, you have to get the Azure MCP server working. You got to install Ollama, and then you got to run any model. Like I'm using Gemma, and I've set up this code so you can use any model that's available on Ollama. Just replace an environment variable. But just in getting that going, you're already learning skills that probably a lot of cloud engineers don't know, don't have the time, or it might be a little bit out of their realm. I think a lot of this stuff is more focused on like developers, people who are coding more. But as you can see here, we're applying this to operations. We're applying this to like what cloud engineers are doing. Just with a little bit of Python knowledge and Python skills, which I've been telling you guys for years that you should have, you can start building awesome tools and awesome projects, okay? So let's go back here. And then it tells us enter your Azure request in natural language or exit to quit. And then I wrote that one query here too. If I were to write list my research groups, it's going to be able to do that for me as well. Now, how does this actually work, or what is actually happening? Okay, so if you're not familiar, Ollama is a tool that allows us to run small language models. ChatGPT is powered by like OpenAI models, right? Claude powered by Claude models. The actual applications that you're going to, like ChatGPT.com or Claude.ai, behind those, they're models, and those are called large language models. Those are massive. Most likely, no, not most likely, definitely, you do not have enough infrastructure at your house to power those, unless you have like an entire data center, right? That's why these things are running on Azure, on GCP, on AWS infrastructure, right? But Ollama allows you to run models, like language models, but smaller ones that can run on your personal computers, depending on how much power you have at home. Like you could have a super sick video card and like a really powerful PC. You could probably run models that are a little bit more powerful than the ones that I can run on my laptop. But Ollama lets us run that on our computer, and that way our code, we can connect it to those models that are running locally instead of having to send anything to the cloud, right? The cloud has its benefits, of course, and then, when you think of something like AI, Azure AI Foundry, you have a model catalog of like, I think someone told me like over 1,000 models. When you think of something like a Hugging Face, there's like, I don't know, 8,000, 10,000 models. There's so many models out there. And it's easy, right? You get an API key or whatever it is, you connect to it, or you're using like Azure credentials or whatever. You connect in it and you can add access to it. But for something smaller, something that you're just learning as a project locally, using Ollama would be awesome. But also, here's the first project idea, or for the first thing I want you to kind of think about is when at your job or for whatever tasks you're accomplishing, how can you leverage these local models that are running, in your environment to help you better accomplish the the tasks? Because the thing is, now let's dive back into the code itself. I'm going to switch here to the right here, and I'm going to close this. I'm going to close this here. Now the thing is, the Python code is nothing special. Essentially, all it does is allows us to connect to the model, and then the special and connect to the model, and then it uses the Azure MCP server because the Azure MCP server exposes some commands for us. So let me show you this. thought I had a link to the Azure MCP server. Yeah. So the Azure MCP server, what it does is it exposes a neat way for programs or projects that are using LLMs and AI and stuff like that. So it's almost kind of like, yeah, a specification in a more like organized way, easier way for us to kind of plug in with Azure commands, right? So if you see here, it says, what can you do with the Azure MCP server? You can explore your Azure resources, query and analyze. And you see these are all natural language queries, right? And then I think a lot of people have been using this to like plug into Visual Studio Code and using GitHub Copilot chat. But as ops people, we're not really using GitHub Copilot that much. I don't think so. I find myself using it more for like dev stuff. But from an operations perspective, I think a lot of people are using CLIs more than that, right? And this exposes uh, some commands here. And we see here we have commands AZMCP server start, AZMCP subscription list, and a bunch of like Cosmos ones. And again, you can go through this doc, right? So I'll close this and we'll go back to the Python code. So it connects to the server here. All right, connect to server. And since it's running locally, we don't really have to worry about like API keys or anything like that. We only need like a server URL, but I do have that in here in case we want to use a model that's hosted. But I'll leave that so you can all build on top of it if you'd like. Okay. So it connects to our server, which is running locally, and then it also has a send command function here. And what's that is doing is essentially sending the command that we want to run from that list that we just saw, right? And before it can do that, it needs to translate to the Azure MCP relevant command, right? Because as you saw, I didn't type in AZ group list, right? Or AZ whatever the one for storage accounts is. I typed in show me the my storage accounts, like list all my storage accounts. I didn't type in any command at all, whatever. So I'll switch this way here. We have now this next functionality, which we will go over here, translate to AZMCP command. And it essentially gets a list of the commands, which you ask the MCP server, hey, what commands do you have available? What tools do you have available? They're called tools. MCP servers, I believe, offer tools, resources, and prompts. And then I just do some parsing. I remove some dashes and spaces and things like that just to clean it up. And then from there, the magic really comes in your system prompt that we are sending to our SLM, which in our case, we're using Gemma, but you can use whatever you'd like. And we tell it, okay, you're an Azure CLI expert. Translate the user's natural language query into the appropriate Azure CLI based on the available commands. And I encourage you to go read through this because that's your first project, I would say, is how can you adapt this to your own use case, right? Now, I only have an Azure example, so obviously this is going to work with people who have Azure environments. But if you have I think I'm pretty sure AWS has an MCP server. Like, how can you get this working with like an AWS MCP server? I don't know if GCP has one. I would be surprised if they didn't, or if there wasn't a community one. But first, project, get this running now. And I intentionally left this very bare bones. I'm going to keep contributing to it. I'm going to keep building on functionality because I think it's really cool, like a really cool idea, and I'm learning a lot. But like, how can you send a query that says, list me all my resource groups, but only, or like, I'll put them in a table? Or how can you be able to say something like, I'll put them in a table and only show me the name and region? Like, you want to be able to send those types of requests and then be able to get the right functionality executed and the right answer returned to you. Some of that will be Python code. Some of that will be in the prompt. Try different models, see what kinds of, maybe instead of the Gemma one, try the Llama ones, try the Phi ones, try the DeepSeek ones. There's so many different things that you can just plug and play leveraging this. So that's your first project. And then from there, build some type of functionality on top of this and then, share it, tag me, do all that good stuff. Okay. That's the first one. Now from here, the next idea I have is how can you have something like this where you launch it and then you type something like show me all of my security vulnerabilities, and it is a like a program that is specialized in finding security vulnerabilities with the help of a local model, right? Or any kind of model. You could use one hosted as well if you wanted to. And then you essentially have program that is specialized in becoming like a security analyst or something like that. And then you can start automating that to be like, send me security briefings every morning on my infrastructure, on my cloud environment, and things like that. That's another project idea that I think would be super sick. You could also do something like, oh, send me, um, I don't know, send me a scan of environments that are not following our infrastructure guidelines. Or like you can start to have a lot of these very specialized, what we call our agents. You know, they do very niche things, very specific things, and accomplish very specific tasks and like very focused tasks, leveraging one your knowledge as an operations person, and then the knowledge of like the model that you use. Okay, now, oh, one other project that I think that would be cool before I dive into this other idea that I have is, what if, we'll switch here. What if you built a browser extension that when you were in the Azure portal, the AWS portal, the GCP portal, whatever they're called, every resource that you select on the top right or somewhere, it shows you the command that you need to run, right? I think that would be super sick. And that might be possible to just do without AI. But I think that would be really, really cool. Like, you probably wouldn't need AI because actually you might not. You may be able to just parse the UI. Well, yeah, like a browser extension up here, you could select it and it says, oh, you want to, like, I don't know, let's say you want to do, like, you're in like Azure App Service, right? And you want to deploy an app to that like Azure App Service that you have. And then it shows you the exact command that you need to use. You just hit copy. The same how like in GitHub you have this code and you have local and you can copy this. What if you could do that? Have that browser extension do the same exact thing, but based on your cloud resource, like depending on where you are inside. I think that would be super sick. Same for like if you're looking at a storage account, like how could you like delete the storage account, or how could you like make some kind of change, anything like that. I think that would be super, super sick project. Now, the next thing I think that would be super cool is we're getting the commands that we can work with Azure from this Azure MCP, right? So it kind of sits in the middle. Maybe we can open Scalidraw to better have an idea of what I'm talking about. But what is this? Claude Plays Pokemon Visual Guide? No, I need a new Scalidraw Plus. Am I not signed in? Come on. Okay, wait, no. Yes, yes. Okay, cool. So, what if? Okay, so right now we have this Azure MCP, right? Azure MCP, and our little program, calling this Azure Terminal ATC, Azure Terminal Copilot, is getting its information from this, right? So it uses, yeah, and then it also has a model. It has a SLM. We'll just call this, yeah, we'll call this SLM. And then we'll go like this. These have back and forths here, and then this also has a back and forth, right? So it gets info and commands from, oh, and auth, because what is connecting to your Azure account is this actual server. I don't have any of that code on here. And this is an implementation. This is something built by that Azure team, right? Now, what if you replace this completely and then build your own MCP? Build your own MCP. And then from there, the opportunities are endless, because then you can provide all the tools, all the prompts, all the research that you wanted. And here you can inject what's like custom to your environment, right? Because as much as like the guidelines and the well architected pillars and whatever, every team, every environment has their own, like, okay, our resource groups are named like this. We have to use these types of SKUs, right? What if you had those instructions and those resources already on the server, And then you replace this one, and then on the opportunities to build tools becomes even, I would say, fun, but even more useful because you're not using like a, this is very useful, but it's trying to be an MCP for everyone who uses Azure. What if you had your own implementation of that? That could be another project. I think doing the first getting this one to work, then maybe building a custom like security one or a custom like networking one or a custom like um, whatever niche you want to get into, and then maybe building the browser extension, and then having enough knowledge to go and build your own. I think after I build this one out, that's something that I'm going to do. That would be really cool, and you would learn a lot from that too. Okay, so that's it for these project ideas. It's just like such a fun time to be in operations and cloud, and like you don't get that you're the people that are figuring this stuff out. You going getting hands on and playing with this stuff. Obviously, play with it locally, and then use local models, and then even in your cloud environments, like or like where you work, like use local models first, and then what works. Maybe then use like larger models that are on like hosted somewhere. There's so much potential. There's so much to figure out, and I think if this stuff doesn't like excite you, and I think maybe you're in up for a little bit of a bad time because a lot of tools and stuff like that are trying to adopt this, and like definitely the industry is going to lean into that a lot more. Like I shared it in my let's see. I shared it in my last video here where we have these eras of cloud, right? We have these eras of cloud, like early cloud, cloud native, and then infrastructure. Oh, here we go. We have these eras of cloud, early cloud, cloud native, infrastructure. And then here it was all about bash, shell, PowerShell. And cloud native was like infrastructure as code, Terraform, Pulumi, CI/CD, YAML, all that kind of stuff, monitoring, that type of things, SDKs. And now we're moving into an era where we're leveraging AI ops. Throughout every single phase, the tools that in the skills that you learned here are still relevant here, are still relevant here, but they just become established, things that you need to know. And all this stuff is figuring out, and we're right here. We're right here. So all that stuff is still, you need to figure out and go and get hands on and play with that kind of stuff. And then I think that's when people build niches for themselves, get in, very lucrative roles, like build skills that are in demand and that are new versus like doing what everyone else has been doing. Okay, that's it for this video. I'll leave everything that you need in the description. Like, comment, all that kind of stuff. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.